The fluorescent lights of Metro Tech Solutions conference room seemed particularly harsh that morning. I adjusted my blazer, still a bit loose after my 3-month hospital stay, and tried to focus on my boss Richard Thompson's face as he delivered what he clearly thought was my professional eulogy. Performance issues, extended absence, company priorities. The words floated around me like leaves in autumn. But I wasn't really listening. Instead, I was thinking about the irony of it all. How just 6 months ago, I had landed Metrotech its biggest medical technology contract in history, the very contract that had eventually saved my life. My name is Emily Chen, and at 34, I never expected to be both a cutting-edge biomedical engineer and a cancer survivor in the same year. But life has a way of writing stories we never see coming. Are you even listening, Emily? Richard's sharp tone cut through my thoughts. His perfectly pressed suit and manicured nails screamed of the success he'd built on others' work, my work. Yes, Richard, I understand perfectly. My voice was calm, steadier than I expected. You're terminating my position due to my extended medical leave. He smiled, that practiced corporate smile that never reached his eyes. Let's call it a mutual parting of ways. Your condition has clearly impacted your ability to maintain the standard of excellence Metrotech demands. Around the conference table, my colleagues, people I'd worked alongside for 5 years, suddenly found their notebooks fascinating. All except Jessica from marketing, who couldn't quite hide her smirk. She'd been gunning for my project director position since day one. Your medical leave has cost the company significant delays, Richard continued, warming to his theme. The Morgan Hospital contract alone has been proceeding exactly on schedule. I interrupted quietly, as per the weekly reports I submitted from my hospital bed. Richard's jaw tightened. He hated being interrupted. Reports that needed extensive revision and oversight. Jessica has been instrumental in keeping things on track. Ah, there it was. Jessica's smirk widened into a full smile. I thought about the nights I'd spent in my hospital room, laptop balanced on my knees, refining the neural interface algorithms for the new surgical guidance system. The nurses had scolded me, saying I needed rest. But the work had given me purpose during the darkest days of my treatment. Of course, I said, reaching for my laptop bag. I'll clean out my office immediately. That would be best. Richard stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Security will escort you. Standard procedure, you understand. As if I might what? Steal the technology I'd invented? The irony would have made me laugh if it weren't so painful. I was halfway to the door when it swung open and my heart nearly stopped. Dr. Catherine Morgan, Chief of Surgery at Morgan Memorial Hospital and our $50 million contract holder, stood in the doorway. Her elegant gray suit contrasted sharply with the memory I had of her in surgical scrubs, leaning over me 4 months ago, telling me they'd caught the cancer just in time. Emily. Her warm smile froze as she took in the scene. The security guard, my laptop bag, Richard's carefully blank expression. I hoped I'd find you here. I wanted to discuss the neural response modifications you suggested during your last treatment session. They're absolutely brilliant. Richard's head snapped up. Treatment session. Dr. Morgan's eyebrows rose. Yes, Emily didn't tell you. She refined the entire surgical guidance interface during her chemotherapy. Said all that time in the scanner gave her new insights into neural mapping. She turned to me. Those modifications you suggested, they've reduced surgical error rates by 47% in initial trials. The medical board is astounded. The silence in the room was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in Richard's head as he realized what he'd done, what he'd lost. Emily was just, he began, being fired. I finished for him. For taking too much medical leave, while redesigning your surgical system. During my cancer treatment, at your hospital, each period felt like a nail in Richard's professional coffin. Dr. Morgan's warm smile turned arctic. Is that so? She placed her briefcase on the conference table with deliberate care. Well, that's fascinating timing, considering I came here today to discuss expanding our contract. The medical board was so impressed with Emily's innovations. They wanted to implement the system across our entire hospital network. $100 million deal minimum. Jessica's smirk had vanished. Richard's face had gone from red to white so fast it was almost impressive. Perhaps we should discuss this in my office, he suggested weakly. Oh, I don't think that will be necessary. Dr. Morgan's voice could have frozen hydrogen. Emily, would you join me for coffee? I believe we have a great deal to discuss about your future, and Metro Tech's future too, though that may need to be discussed with my lawyers present. I stood there for a moment, looking at the faces around me. These people who had been my colleagues, who had watched me work myself to exhaustion building something revolutionary, who had said nothing as I was cast aside. I'd love to, I said, shouldering my laptop bag. I know a great place just down the street. As Dr. Morgan and I walked out, I heard Richard's voice, slightly desperate. Emily, wait. But I didn't wait. I didn't look back, because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward, about taking your brilliance somewhere it will be truly valued. And as Dr. Morgan and I stepped into the elevator, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored walls. I looked different than I had 6 months ago. Thinner, yes, but also stronger somehow. More certain. You know, Dr. Morgan said as the doors closed, I'm not just interested in buying your technology. I'm interested in building something entirely new, something that could change medical technology forever. She paused, studying me. How would you feel about starting your own company? I smiled, thinking about all the ideas I'd sketched out during those long nights in the hospital, ideas that went far beyond what Metro Tech could ever envision. I think, I said carefully, that would be exactly what the doctor ordered. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and with them, opened the first chapter of my new story. Richard and Metro Tech were already fading into the past, becoming nothing more than a reminder that sometimes our worst moments can lead us to our greatest opportunities. But this was just the beginning. As Dr. Morgan and I walked out into the bright morning sunlight, I knew that the real story, my story, was just beginning to unfold. 6 months after walking out of Metro Tech's glass doors, I sat in a very different conference room. The furniture was secondhand, the walls needed painting, but the energy in the space crackled with possibility. Around the table sat my newly formed team, brilliant minds I'd handpicked, people chosen not just for their expertise, but for their integrity. The initial trials at Morgan Memorial are exceeding all expectations, Dr. Sarah Wong, my head of clinical research, reported. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she pulled up the latest data. The enhanced neural mapping system is showing a 63% improvement in surgical precision. We're revolutionizing microsurgery. I smiled, remembering how Richard had once called these same innovations unrealistic and too ambitious. Now, Neurovision Medical Technologies, my company, was making them reality. But success never comes without resistance. My phone buzzed with an incoming email, and my smile faded as I read it. Metro Tech's lawyers? Asked Michael Torres, our legal counsel. He'd been handling the increasing stream of threats and challenges from my former employer. I nodded. They're claiming ownership of the neural interface patents, saying they were developed while I was their employee. But that's not, Sarah began, indignant. True? I finished. No, it's not. Every innovation in our current system was developed during my medical leave, after they'd already begun the termination process. And more importantly, I pulled out a thick folder I kept secure since my hospital days. I documented everything, every idea, every line of code, time-stamped and witnessed by the hospital staff. Michael grinned. They have no idea what they're walking into, do they? Before I could answer, my assistant rushed in. Emily, you need to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to a tech industry news site. The headline made my blood boil. Metro Tech announces revolutionary neural surgery system. Below was a photo of Richard and Jessica at a press conference, standing proudly before a system that looked suspiciously like an early prototype of mine, the one I'd left behind. They're trying to beat us to market, Sarah said, reading over my shoulder, with an inferior copy of your work. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt an odd sense of calm. They're desperate, I said. They know we're close to FDA approval. They're trying to undermine us before we can launch. What do we do? Asked James Chen, our head of development. He'd left a cushy job at a major tech firm to join my startup, believing in my vision. I stood up, walking to the whiteboard where we'd mapped out our development timeline. We don't change a thing. We stay focused on building something better. I turned to face my team. They're fighting the last war. We're creating the future. The next few weeks were intense. While MetroTech made splashy announcements about their innovative system, we quietly continued our work. Dr. Morgan's hospital network provided invaluable real-world testing opportunities, and each success strengthened our position. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in the lab, fine-tuning the neural response algorithms, when Dr. Morgan called. Her voice was urgent. "Emily, how quickly can you get to the hospital? We have an emergency case, a young girl with a brain tumor. The conventional surgical approach is too risky." I glanced at the prototype we'd been testing. The system isn't fully certified yet. The FDA has granted emergency approval for this case. The family's desperate. They've heard about our trial results. 2 hours later, I stood in Morgan Memorial's advanced surgical suite, watching as Dr. Morgan used our system to navigate through the delicate tissues of 8-year-old Sophie Martinez's brain. The neural interface provided unprecedented precision, showing pathways and dangers invisible to the naked eye. The surgery lasted 9 hours. When Dr. Morgan finally emerged, her smile told us everything we needed to know. "Complete success," she announced to the waiting family. "The tumor is gone, with minimal impact to surrounding tissue." As the parents wept with joy, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Dr. Morgan. "This," she said quietly, "is why we do what we do." The success story spread rapidly through the medical community. While MetroTech was holding press conferences, we were saving lives. Other hospitals began reaching out, asking to be part of our trials. Then came the morning of MetroTech's big product launch. I was surprised to receive an invitation. Clearly a power play on Richard's part, a chance to show off his victory. I decided to attend. The hotel ballroom was packed with media, investors, and medical professionals. Richard took the stage, confident as ever. "Today, MetroTech revolutionizes surgical technology," he began. I sat quietly in the back, watching as he demonstrated their system. It was exactly what I feared, a rushed, superficial copy of my early work. As he walked through the features, I could see the flaws, the corners cut, the safety issues they hadn't even recognized. During the Q&A, a hand raised in the middle of the room. "Dr. Thompson, could you address the safety concerns raised by the Medical Technology Review Board?" Richard frowned. "What concerns?" Dr. Catherine Morgan stood up, commanding the room's attention. "The board's analysis found critical flaws in your neural mapping system. The same flaws, interestingly, that Emily Chen identified and solved months ago, after you fired her." The room erupted in murmurs. Richard's face reddened. "Those claims are unsubstantiated." Actually, another voice called out, Dr. Wong, standing by the door, "They're extensively documented. We've submitted comprehensive safety studies to the FDA comparing your system's approach with our corrected methodology." "Your system?" Richard sputtered. That was my cue. I stood up. "Yes, Neurovision's system. The one that just saved Sophie Martinez's life last week. The one that's already been approved for expanded trials across 6 major hospital networks." The room's attention shifted to me. Foams came out as reporters recognized the story unfolding before them. "Would you care to explain the differences between the systems?" asked a journalist in the front row. I walked to the stage, each step measured and confident. Richard had no choice but to step aside. For the next 20 minutes, I walked through the technical details, the safety innovations, the real-world results. I didn't need to attack MetroTech's system, its flaws were self-evident in comparison. In conclusion, I said, medical technology isn't about being first to market. It's about being best for patients. Every innovation in our system comes from real experience, including insights gained during my own battle with cancer, a battle that MetroTech considered too inconvenient to accommodate. The silence in the room was deafening. Then, from the back, someone began to applaud. The sound spread until it filled the ballroom. I looked at Richard, standing forgotten at the side of the stage. He wouldn't meet my eyes. In the weeks that followed, MetroTech's stock took a significant hit. They withdrew their system for further development. Jessica resigned. Richard was quietly moved to a less visible position. But I barely noticed. I was too busy building something that mattered. 1 year to the day after my firing, I stood in our new headquarters, a renovated research facility with state-of-the-art labs and a view of the city. Dr. Morgan had become our board chair, helping guide our expansion into new areas of medical technology. Our team had grown to over 100 people, each chosen for their brilliance and their heart. On my desk sat a frame containing my original termination notice from MetroTech, next to a recent headline: Neurovision Technologies Revolutionizes Surgical Care. CEO Emily Chen named Medical Innovator of the Year. But my favorite moment came later that week, during a routine surgery using our system. As I watched from the observation room, a young resident turned to me and asked, "How did you even think of this approach?" I smiled, remembering those long nights in the hospital when what seemed like the end of my career had actually been the beginning of something far greater. Sometimes, I told her, the best innovations come when you're forced to see things from a completely new perspective. And as I watched our technology help guide another successful surgery, I realized that the greatest revenge against those who try to diminish you isn't proving them wrong. It's soaring so far beyond their limited vision that they become nothing more than a tiny footnote in your story of success. The lawsuit from MetroTech was eventually dropped. They couldn't fight against the overwhelming evidence and public opinion. Richard, I heard, started a consulting firm, though he carefully avoids any mention of his time overseeing medical technology development. As for me, I recently approved our company's new policy: unlimited medical leave for any employee battling serious illness, with guaranteed job protection and flexible work arrangements. Because sometimes the worst moments in our lives can lead us to our greatest accomplishments if we're just given the chance to prove it. Dr. Morgan still teases me about that day she walked into my trial. Best timing of my career, she says. I disagree. The timing wasn't lucky, it was inevitable. Because sooner or later, truth and talent will always rise to the surface. The trick is to keep believing in yourself long enough to see it happen. Last week, I received an invitation to speak at a major medical technology conference. The topic? Innovation through adversity: how personal challenges drive professional breakthroughs. I accepted immediately. After all, I have quite a story to tell. They say grief comes in waves. What they don't tell you is that sometimes those waves crash into you while you're standing in your childhood kitchen, staring at a half-empty coffee mug your father will never drink from again. I'm Emily Chen, 35, and 2 weeks ago, I lost both my parents in a car accident. Mom and Dad were driving home from their weekly date night when a drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly, or so the police told me. I'm still not sure if that makes it better or worse. The house feels different now. Every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway serves as a reminder that I'm alone here. Well, not entirely alone. I moved back in 6 months ago when Dad's Parkinson's started getting worse. Mom needed help, and being a freelance graphic designer meant I could work from anywhere. My older brother Michael hadn't exactly volunteered, too busy with his real estate empire in the city. "You should stay with them, he'd said during one of our rare phone calls. "You're single? No kids. It makes sense." The way he emphasized single made it sound like a character flaw rather than a choice. But I'd learned long ago that arguing with Michael was like trying to nail Jello to a wall, messy and pointless. So I moved back to the suburbs, into my old bedroom that still had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Mom had kept it exactly as I'd left it after college, right down to the Taylor Swift posters and the corkboard filled with high school memories. During those 6 months, I watched Dad's hands shake more with each passing week, helped Mom with the cooking and cleaning, and tried to memorize every detail of their faces, every story they told, every laugh we shared. I didn't know I was creating my last memories with them. The sound of tires on gravel snapped me out of my thoughts. Through the kitchen window, I watched Michael's black Mercedes pull into the driveway, the morning sun glinting off its pristine surface. He'd been surprisingly absent since the funeral, claiming he was handling the paperwork and dealing with the estate. Whatever that meant. The front door opened without a knock. Michael never knocked, not even when we were kids. He walked into the kitchen like he owned it, his expensive suit a stark contrast to my worn jeans and Dad's old Northwestern sweatshirt that I couldn't bring myself to wash because it still smelled like him. "Emily," he nodded, setting his leather briefcase on the counter. "We need to talk." Something in his tone made my stomach clench. I'd heard that tone before, usually right before he announced something that would upend my life. Like when he told me he'd borrowed my college fund to start his business, promising to pay it back with interest. I'm still waiting. "What's wrong?" I asked, wrapping my hands around my coffee mug, seeking comfort in its warmth. Michael pulled out a chair but didn't sit. Instead, he leaned forward, his hands gripping the backrest. I've been going through Dad's will and other documents, he began, his voice carefully neutral. There are some things we need to discuss about the house. What about it? Dad left it to me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. That's impossible, I finally managed. Dad would have told me. I've been living here, taking care of them. Which we're all grateful for, Michael cut in smoothly. But the fact remains, the house is legally mine now, and I think it's time we discussed your living arrangements. The meaning behind his words hit me like a physical blow. You want me to move out? I'm planning to sell the house, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. The market's hot right now, and this neighborhood has really come up in value. The property could easily fetch 7 figures. I felt the room spin slightly. The house had been in our family for 3 generations. Grandpa Chen had bought it in the 1960s when few Chinese families could get mortgages in suburban neighborhoods. Dad had grown up here, and so had we. Every wall held memories, every room echoed with our family's history. You can't sell it, I whispered. This is our home. Michael's expression hardened. It's an asset, Emily, and as the executor of the estate, it's my responsibility to manage it properly. Show me the will, I demanded, standing up so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a document, sliding it across the table. I snatched it up, scanning the pages with trembling hands. There it was, in black and white. To my son, Michael Chen, I leave my primary residence. This doesn't make sense, I muttered, reading and rereading the paragraph. Dad would never. He knew I would make the smart financial decision. Michael said, straightening his tie. Unlike some people, I understand the value of property in today's market. The implied criticism stung, but I was too shocked to respond. My eyes kept going back to the date on the will, March 15, 2024. Just 2 months ago. Dad could barely hold a pen in March, I said slowly, pieces starting to click together. His tremors were so bad he couldn't even sign his name most days. Something flickered across Michael's face. Concern? Fear? But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. The will is properly witnessed and notarized, he said firmly. Now, I'm willing to be reasonable about this. I'll give you 60 days to find a new place. No. The word came out stronger than I expected. Michael blinked, clearly not used to being contradicted. Excuse me? I said no, I'm not leaving and you're not selling this house. Michael's carefully maintained composure cracked. This isn't a negotiation, Emily. The house is mine legally. If you force me to, I'll have my lawyers. Your lawyers? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the ones Dad paid for when you were starting out? The ones who helped you set up your first property deal? Don't be bitter, it's not attractive. Michael sneered. Just because you chose to waste your potential on artistic pursuits doesn't mean. Get out. You can't throw me out of my own house. Watch me. I walked to the front door and held it open. And Michael? Don't come back without the real will. He gathered his briefcase, his movements sharp with anger. You're making a mistake, Emily. A big one. I'll give you a week to reconsider before I involve my lawyers. After he left, I sank to the floor, my back against the door. The house seemed to close in around me, every surface holding memories that suddenly felt threatened. Mom and Dad couldn't be gone just for their home to be sold off like any other property on Michael's books. There had to be something I was missing. I spent the next 3 days going through every drawer, every file cabinet, every box in the attic. Dad had always been meticulously organized, keeping everything from old tax returns to childhood report cards carefully labeled and filed. But I couldn't find another copy of the will. What I did find, tucked away in Dad's study desk, was his journal. The last entry was dated just a week before the accident. Michael came by today, pushing about the will again. I told him no. This house stays in the family, stays with Emily. She's the one who understands what that means. I've made arrangements. E will know where to look. My heart raced as I read the words over and over. E will know where to look. Dad was trying to tell me something, but what? I closed my eyes, thinking back to all the times Dad had shared family stories with me during those last months. He'd been especially nostalgic, showing me old photos, telling me about Grandpa Chen's struggles and triumphs. One story kept coming back to me, about how Grandpa had built a hidden safe behind the fireplace when he first bought the house, worried that banks wouldn't protect a Chinese family savings back then. Always good to have a backup plan, Dad had said, giving me that knowing look I never quite understood. Until now. I rushed to the living room, my heart pounding. The fireplace was original to the house, its brick facade unchanged since the 1960s. I ran my hands over the rough surface, pressing and prodding until, there. A slight give in one of the bricks, almost imperceptible unless you knew what you were looking for. The hidden panel swung open with a soft click, revealing a small safe I'd never known existed. My hands shook as I input the combination. My birthday, just like Dad used for everything important. The door opened with a quiet creak. Inside was a manila envelope, sealed and labeled in Dad's shaky handwriting. The Real Will 2024. I opened it carefully, my breath catching as I read the contents. This one was different from the one Michael had shown me. Very different. Not only did it leave the house to me, but it also contained something else. Documented proof that Michael had been embezzling from Dad's accounts for years, using forged signatures to transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars to his real estate ventures. "Oh, Michael," I whispered, understanding dawning. "What have you done?" The house phone rang, making me jump. Michael's number flashed on the caller ID. "Changed your mind yet?" he asked without preamble when I answered. "My lawyers are drawing up the eviction papers as we speak." I thought about the documents in my hands, about Dad's last message to me, about everything Michael had taken from our family over the years. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I think we need to have another talk. And this time, Michael, you might want to bring those lawyers of yours. They're going to want to see what I found in Dad's safe." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Part 2. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. I scanned every document from the safe, made multiple copies, and stored them in different locations. Years of dealing with Michael had taught me to always have backups. I also called Sarah Martinez, Dad's longtime attorney who had mysteriously retired right around the time the suspicious will appeared. "I've been waiting for your call," she said when I explained what I found. Her voice carried a mix of relief and resignation. "Your father contacted me in February, worried about some irregularities in his accounts. When I started looking into it," she paused. "Let's just say your brother made it very clear what would happen to my law license if I didn't cooperate." "He threatened you?" "Blackmail is such an ugly word," Sarah replied dryly. "But yes, he fabricated evidence suggesting I had mishandled client funds. Said he'd report me to the Bar Association unless I stepped aside and let his new attorneys handle everything." My hands clenched around the phone. "Will you help me now?" "Emily, I've kept detailed records of everything, including recordings of Michael's threats. I may be retired, but I still know how to protect myself and my clients." By the time Michael arrived at the house the next morning, I was ready. He brought 2 attorneys with him, both young men in expensive suits who looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate law firm catalog. I had Sarah Martinez sitting beside me at the dining room table, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression pleasantly neutral. Michael faltered slightly when he saw her but recovered quickly. "Sarah," he nodded. "I thought you retired." "Oh, I have," she smiled, the expression not reaching her eyes. "I'm just here as a family friend. Supporting Emily, you know." They sat down, Michael's lawyers arranging their papers with practiced efficiency. "We have the eviction notices prepared," one of them began, but I cut him off. "Before we start," I said, sliding a folder across the table, "you might want to look at these." Michael didn't move to take the folder, but one of his lawyers opened it. I watched their faces as they read, the younger one's eyes widening, the older one's lips pressing into a thin line. Michael's complexion turned ashen as they whispered to him. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, his voice hoarse. "Dad's safe, the one Grandpa built. The one you never knew about because you were too busy making money to listen to family stories." I leaned forward. "It's all there, Michael. Every forged signature, every unauthorized transfer, every cent you stole from our father while he was dying." "I didn't steal anything," he snapped. "I was investing in our family's future. Dad didn't understand modern business. Dad understood exactly what you were doing." I cut in. He just couldn't believe his own son would betray him like this. "Want to know what else is in that folder?" "The real will, the one that leaves the house to me and explicitly states that if you contest it, All evidence of your fraud goes straight to the FBI. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the grandfather clock in the hall seemed to hold its breath. Mr. Chin, the older lawyer said quietly, I suggest we take a brief recess to discuss. There's nothing to discuss. Michael stood up so abruptly his chair toppled backward. This is blackmail. Sarah spoke for the first time, her voice gentle but firm. No, Michael. This is accountability, something you've managed to avoid for far too long. He turned to his lawyers. She can't do this. There must be some way to. Sit down, Michael. My voice cut through his rising panic. We're not finished. Surprisingly, he sat. Maybe he saw something in my expression, some echo of Dad's authority that even he couldn't ignore. Here's what's going to happen. I continued, pulling out another document. This is a new agreement drawn up by Sarah before her retirement. You're going to sign over any claim to the house. You're going to repay every cent you took from Dad's accounts with interest. And you're going to do it quietly, without involving lawyers or courts. And if I refuse? I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then every bank you do business with, every investor in your properties, every client you've ever had will receive copies of these documents. How long do you think your real estate empire will last when people learn you built it with stolen money? Michael's facade cracked. For a moment, I saw the scared little boy he must have been before greed and ambition twisted him into the man sitting across from me. You destroy me? Your own brother? Like you tried to destroy me, steal my home, erase our family's history. I shook my head. I'm not destroying you, Michael. I'm giving you a chance to make things right. More than you deserve, really. His lawyers huddled with him in a corner of the room, their whispered conversation intense. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. Finally, Michael returned to his seat. I'll sign, he said, his voice hollow. But I want something in return. You're not really in a position to negotiate. Just don't tell Mom's family. Please, they don't need to know about any of this. The request surprised me. Michael had never seemed to care much about our mother's relatives, rarely attending family gatherings on that side, but looking at him now, I saw something I hadn't expected. Shame. Fine, I agreed. As long as you honor every part of this agreement, what happened here stays between us. The next hour was spent signing papers, transferring accounts, making arrangements for repayment. When it was done, Michael stood to leave, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Emily, he paused at the door. I convinced myself I deserved it all, that I was smarter, worked harder, knew better than everyone else. I didn't think about family. I finished for him. About trust. About the fact that success doesn't mean anything if you destroy everyone who loves you to get it. He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Goodbye, Michael. After they left, Sarah helped me pack up the documents. Your father would be proud, she said softly. He always said you were the one who truly understood what family means. I looked around the living room, at the photos on the wall spanning 3 generations of Chens. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Grandpa Chen standing proudly in front of the house. Michael and me as children, before money and ambition drove us apart. What happens now? I asked, suddenly feeling very tired. Sarah smiled. Now, my dear, you live. You honor your parents' memory. You make this house a home again. That was 6 months ago. The house feels different now, but in a good way. I've repainted some rooms, planted a garden like Mom always wanted, started hosting weekly dinners for Mom's family, keeping my promise not to tell them about Michael, but making sure our family bonds stay strong. Michael keeps his distance, though he's been making the repayment transfers on schedule. Sometimes I see his car drive slowly past the house. But he never stops. Maybe someday we'll find a way to be family again. But for now, this distance feels right. Last week, I was cleaning out Dad's study and found another entry in his journal, one I'd missed before. It was dated just days before the accident. Washed Emily in the garden today. Planting those roses Ming always wanted. She thinks I'm napping, but I see her. See how she loves this place, understands what it means. Michael wants to know where the new will is. Keeps asking about the house. But I've made sure Emily will find what she needs when the time comes. My daughter is stronger than she knows. Just like her grandfather, she'll protect what matters. I closed the journal, tears blurring my vision. Outside, the roses Mom never got to see were starting to bloom. In the hallway, Grandpa Chen's clock chimed the hour, its sound echoing through the house that 3 generations of my family had called home. Some people say a house is just wood and brick, just an asset on a balance sheet. But they're wrong. A home is built from memories, from love, from the stories passed down through generations. And sometimes, if we're lucky, it becomes a fortress protecting not just our possessions, but our family's legacy. I'm Emily Chin, and this is my home. Not because a will says so, but because 3 generations of my family lived and loved here. Because my father trusted me to protect it. Because even when the walls echo with loss, they also whisper of hope, of continuity, of belonging. And no amount of money in the world can buy that.